So, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Inshallah, today we will be talking about engagement still. We're still within that area. Last time we talked about marriage conduct. We talked about the word al-mithaq al-ghalid. And to speak about the word al-mithaq al-ghalid, we went in details with this mithaq and we gave a detailed interpretation and certainly talked about the dynamics and the implications of that tafsir for that ayah in Surah Al-Nisa. الرجال قوامون على النساء, and we went in details with each and every single word in order to explain this mithaq ghalid and what it really contained and why it's important to understand just this word and understand the importance of it. Okay, and we also talked about the importance of family support, and we went in some details with that. And certainly now we're going into the actual, let's just say, fiqh of marriage right there. And let's start. What must be in a marriage contract? Okay, but before I get to this one, I think it's important to talk about two things. Number one is that there is a valid marriage contract. Okay, it's either going to be a valid marriage contract or it's going to be an invalid marriage contract. But pay attention to this one. Stop right there because this is really important to say. There is a difference between scholars. You got two madhab, okay? You've got the Hanafi madhab. They disagreed that there's only either a valid marriage contract or an invalid marriage contract. Okay, when you say a valid marriage contract, what are you actually saying? When you say a valid marriage contract, you're actually talking about a marriage that is considered basically a halal relationship. Okay. What that means is that number one, we're going to say that kids are attributed to this father. That means that this man is responsible for child support. This man is going to be responsible for an alimony at least until basically the waiting period ends. We're talking about waiting period that is basically also obligatory. We're talking about a whole detail in order to exit this relationship, that there's a whole detail. Let's call it a process. Let's call this as just a process. Okay, that's what it means to say that there is a valid marriage. Okay, means a marriage halal relationship. That means this is not zina. If we are to say that this is not a valid marriage contract, that means basically the opposite of all of this. That would mean there is no halal relationship. That would also mean this is zina. All right. Two, that would also mean that the kids are not attributed to the dad and basically going to be just called, well, your mom is this person, but we're not sure about the paternity of your children. Can we use a DNA? Hold on to this question. Okay. Waiting period. That does not necessarily mean if she was in an invalid marriage relationship, that doesn't mean there's no waiting period, because she cannot be intimate until she gets a cycle to make sure that she is not pregnant from a previous relationship, even if that was her own husband. Let me explain this. Let's just say she cheated on her husband. Let's just assume, God forbid. Okay. But it does happen. Okay. Let's just say this woman cheated on her husband and she knows who the person is, of course. Or let's say she was raped. Okay. Her husband cannot be intimate with her until she would get a cycle, and we would make sure basically with that cycle, that she's not pregnant as a result of that, whether the zina incident or whether it was the rape incident that happened. And even though she's actually married to this man. Okay. Does that mean she can be intimate with the other person? The answer is absolutely not, because anyways, we know that idea. We know that whole thing, that any relationship outside of marriage is actually considered zina. Okay, we already know that piece. And let's just flip this. Let's just say she was in a relationship with, she wasn't married, she was in a relationship, and then she decided to do tawbah. Okay. She decided to do tawbah. And then while she, she was like, that's it, determined to do tawbah. She wanted to do tawbah. A week later, she gets a marriage proposal. Her family agrees, she agrees, all of that. And then they're going to be making their wedding, let's say planned 2 weeks from that date. Okay. But she was intimate with someone else, let's say 2 weeks prior. We're going to say, do not, even though you're going to get married and you were doing and you did your tawbah, do not be intimate till you get a menstrual cycle, just to make sure you are not pregnant from that relationship. Do you have to say that you were in a haram relationship? The answer is do not disclose that. That's something between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore, we would say, make tawbah. But when it comes to the paternity of this child, we need to make sure that you are not pregnant from a previous relationship. The paternity issue is an extremely serious issue in Islam. Now, in order to make sure that we have the paternity in place, that's why we would talk about the waiting period, even if this person is going into a halal relationship. If, let's say, she was in a haram relationship, she would still need to do a waiting period, not necessarily to honor the person that she was with, but to honor that this child's paternity is sacred to know and sacred to basically preserve, not getting mixed with other perhaps possible paternities. Let's say that that's number one. Number two, the Prophet ﷺ had actually said in a hadith, مَلْعُونٌ مَنْ سَقَى مَاءَهُ زَرْعَ غَيْرِهِ. Let's look at this hadith. This hadith, basically just the wording of it, basically just says, well, the man that irrigates somebody else's crops is cursed. Where in this hadith is just having the adab. He's not talking about somebody just getting a hose of water and just deciding to irrigate somebody else's plants from dying. That's not what he's talking about. This is a metaphorical hadith, but because the Prophet ﷺ was using the adab, he didn't want to be explicit in his words and said, مَلْعُونٌ مَنْ سَقَى مَاءَهُ. He's talking about basically semen. He's talking about that if a man were to be intimate with someone else, with another woman that is, and she was already pregnant from someone else, then therefore this person would be considered as mal'oon, as somebody that is cursed. And cursed actually means that the person is prevented from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. Now, when we look at these two, for the majority of the scholars, they said the marriage contract is either going to be valid or the marriage contract is going to be invalid. If it is invalid, then it's not a halal relationship, it's zina. For a valid marriage contract, that means the relationship is valid and therefore it's a marriage that we would consider. But for the Hanafi madhab, they said, sorry, majority, Maliki, Hanbali, and Shafi'i, I recognize this this classification that you have here, I can see you said that there's either a Sahih relationship or there's a Batil relationship. But the Hanafis, they said, sorry, we don't fully agree with this classification. Why not? They said, well, there is a pseudo halal relationship. Wait a minute, what does that even mean? Well, they said, well, this would be fasid. Okay, what does that look like? They said, well, I'll give you an example. You can have a relationship where it was perhaps it's not a valid marriage, but then we had this man and this woman, they were married, but then later on, a woman pops up and she says, hey, you two are married? I didn't know that, but guess what? I actually nursed both of you. You were at my daycare, and so were you. Your mother left you with me, and I nursed both of you. Not two nurses, not 2 times, but I nursed you 5 and 12 and 20 times. So there's no way that you can doubt that both of you are brother and sister in milk relations. Okay. Does that mean this is zina and therefore we have to punish them for the punishment of zina? That's where the Hanafi madhab comes in. And they said, okay, if in situations we don't have a zina case, and we have a marriage, but this marriage basically would have some of the different details, they either go wrong or there's trouble in understanding the contract and or something within there, then in that situation, in some cases, they need further scrutiny before we would say that this was a relationship of zina. So that's an example. Or let's say this girl gets married, and then the husband discovers that, oh, she was forced into this relationship. It was an arranged marriage. That's not what she was interested in. And it turned out that her parents said, you either get married to him or we're going to doubt whether you're a virgin or not. You know, these kind of old stories, traditional stories. And then she accepted the relationship. Okay, she accepted to get married and all of that. And she was then wondering whether this was halal or not. I didn't really give my consent, but then here it is. Found myself in this marriage. Does that mean my marriage is haram? So then the Hanafi scholars would say, no, it's not a haram relationship. It basically falls within the pseudo halal relationship, or the valid marriage contract, would be within that area, but not within the area of zina. Okay, so why is this classification important? Well, basically because if you were to say a halal relationship, that would mean you're talking about the paternity of the children, you're talking about responsibility, child support, etc. So in the case of, let's say, that woman that came up and said, hey, I nursed both of you and your brother and sister, well, that doesn't mean that the kids are not attributed to their dad. No, the kids are going to be attributed to the dad, according to all the scholars. All the scholars would agree, even the scholars that said that it's either going to be a halal contract or it's going to be a haram contract, they would still say that the kids are going to be attributed to that father. Okay, and they also considered that, yes, we will separate between them into what is called fasq. I'll explain this in just a bit. Okay, they said, well, we'll separate between them. They can't be married anymore, but the father is still going to be responsible for the child support. The father is still going to be responsible for at least the time of waiting period till she figures herself out. And there's also going to be a waiting period. Certainly, the exit was not going to be through divorce, but it's going to be called through fasq. We'll talk about that later. But I just wanted you to see this. We're going to talk about this later on in further details. But why is that important to understand? That's important to understand because we're going to get to this one. In a marriage contract, there are these things that must be there in a marriage contract. If one of them is not there, then that's when we're going to say we have an invalid marriage contract, or at least a invalid marriage contract. Okay. Number one, Islam. If any of this, if the spouses, especially if we're going to get in details about men marrying non-Muslim women, or at least a Christian or a Jewish woman, but in terms of Islam, if the wife is Muslim, then therefore she could only marry a Muslim man. No question about that. I'm going to get to, inshallah, the evidences later, but just, right now, this is an intro. The second one is consent from both sides. Consent from both sides, consent from the husband's side, consent from the wife's side, consent from the wali as well. Why is that important? We're going to talk about the wali later on. But consent from the wali, I'll just generally speak. The Prophet ﷺ said, أيما امرأة نكحت بغير إذن وليها فنكاحها باطل باطل باطل. I want to write that down because just an hour ago or 2 hours ago, I got a girl actually telling me that she got married. Let's look at this one. أيما امرأة نكحت بغير إذن وليها. Okay. فنكاحها باطل باطل باطل. I want you to look at this one. أيما امرأة, any woman. It didn't specify whether this woman is going to be a divorcee, or whether she is a woman that is an older lady, 60 years old, 70 years old, or whether this woman is 15 or 16, or whether this woman is a widow, or whether this woman is a virgin. The hadith is straightforward. أيما امرأة. And in Lugha Arabiya, we say this is min alfaz al-umum. It is basically one of those inclusive terms in Arabic. Any woman, regardless of her social status, regardless of her legal status, regardless of whatever, any woman that would get married without the consent of her wali, her marriage is invalid, 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 as the Prophet ﷺ had said. This hadith was narrated by Sayyidah Aisha. It is not patriarchal. Okay, this hadith was narrated by Sayyidah Aisha. Sayyidah Aisha narrated upon the Prophet ﷺ. Any woman that was that got married. What about the other hadith when the Prophet ﷺ had said that for a woman that she basically would give the idhn if she's virgin, idhnuha simatuha, that a woman that is virgin, her idhn, her consent would be in silence, or in a woman that is a thayyib basically, or a woman that had a marriage experience before, that she would basically say it. This is not to say whatsoever that she would be getting married by her own will or by her own self and basically becoming, I don't need a wali therefore. Absolutely not. And the claim that Hanafis, listen to this, there are many people that misunderstand the madhab itself. The madhab Hanafi did not say that a woman can get married without a wali, but here's what they said. They said موقوف على إجازة الولي. What does that mean? So let me explain this one. Now we're going deep in fiqh. So ladies, put on your fiqh hat, and I want you to, just wake up. If you need some coffee, drink it. And I want you to wake up and pay attention to this one. There are two things. Number one is that there are certain contracts when we say موقوف على إجازة الولي, that would mean that we would get, if we're talking about a contract, okay? The contracts are two kinds. There's a contract where we would say, well, these two on their own, with of course, the two witnesses, and let's say we're talking about the mahar right there to be paid, etc. Then in that situation, we would basically look at the case and say, okay, we've got right there the consent from both sides, and let's say the wali wasn't present, okay? Let's say the wali wasn't present, then in that situation, we would say, okay, the wali is not present, but man kana lahu imam. And what sorry, السلطان ولي من لا ولي له, okay? And السلطان ولي من لا ولي له, meaning that in the situation where the imam is not present, then the qadi himself would basically consummate the marriage contract. But if we're speaking about a marriage contract and the woman didn't have a wali, she didn't have a wali, not because she's trying to make this marriage a secret, but she didn't have a wali because she was a revert. So if she's a revert, then we would say, okay, we would really like it that your family is on board, because they'll also, you know, be on board when other serious matters happen. But if your wali or your father is not Muslim, then we would hope that the Islamic Center would take over in searching the background of that person, giving you the right advice. In other words, acting as an institution on behalf of the wali to basically work in her favor and in her interest. Okay, but let's say the wali was not there. That's when we would say as-sultan waliyu man la waliya lah. That's when we would say, well, the imam or the qadi would basically be the person to be as the leader or the one to consummate the marriage contract. 3, to basically hide the marriage contract and let the wali not be aware of it because of a personal reason or whatever it is that she wanted to do, that would make the marriage contract invalid, even according to the madhab Hanafi. Why? Because they said mawqufun ala ijazat al-wali, meaning that the wali would basically have to know, and we would look at the wali's objection. So if the wali objected, and we're going to look at what right of objection does he have. Let's say he's objecting because they come from a different tribe, or probably because he wanted her to get married to her cousin and not to this person, or because he had a certain person in mind or whatever it is, then in that situation, the qadi will intervene and say, okay, what is your objection, Dad? And Dad will say, well, my objection is 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the qadi will look into each and every single objection. And then the qadi, while looking into the case, sees that the father's objections were not valid objections according to Islam. And then therefore, even if the wali did not approve the marriage, the qadi, looking into the wali's objection, the qadi might say, sorry, your objection is invalid, and since you were abusing your wali position, then in that situation, we would basically intervene as the Muslim court or the Muslim qadi and actually consummate the marriage, the marriage contract, and basically move forward, even if the wali did not accept. But if there are multiple awliya, she has 9 brothers and sisters, then we would say, let's look into let's say the eldest brother. Does he have to be the wali? The answer is no, it doesn't have to be the eldest brother. Okay. and let's say she had 9 brothers and sisters, doesn't have to be the eldest brother, but let's say we basically had the eldest brother say, well, here's my objection to this, and it was an objection that Islam does not approve of. We're going to talk about which objections are valid and which objections are not valid. Okay, then in that situation, we would then say, well, if the brother, that eldest brother, is basically abusing his status and not, let's say, wise and not giving the right objection, then we would look into another wali. Okay, I could see a number of different hands are rising. Go ahead, dear. Humaira, go ahead, dear.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته شيخة.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Go ahead.
So exactly, I'm not sure which mazhab is this, but there's a claim that if a married woman, a divorced woman, gets married for the second time, she doesn't need sawali. Is this true? Because she has a marriage experience.
That's exactly that's exactly what I am basically trying to make clear. That no, even if she is a divorcee, she still needs a wali. According to all the scholars, all the madhab, even the Hanafi madhab regarded that she needs a wali because the hadith is clear. Any woman that gets married without a wali, her marriage contract is invalid. Okay. Now the other thing, where does this come from? This comes from a wrong understanding for the hadith when the Prophet ﷺ said in that hadith that a woman that is virgin, idnuha sumatuha, her silence is basically what is needed, but the other one that she would basically have to say it. This is a completely different thing. This is a completely different thing. Even a woman that is divorced and a woman that probably has 5 children, she would not get married without a wali. And the wali must be either, one, informed to basically give consent or informed about this. You can't just make it a secret, and even your wali is like, oh, really? That's my daughter. She's in a relationship with a man. And remember what we talked about before. Okay, we said the al-ghunmu bil-ghurm. If anything wrong goes, you definitely would run to your dad in help. Well, if you run to your dad for asking for support, isn't it also fair that he would be informed, that he would give his consent as well? He would be a person that we're asking him in case something goes wrong, that he would be basically acting responsibly. Well, it would be fair, since you want him to act responsibly, for him to also see whether this is something that is good for you or not. And this is a very common false statement that I would see people basically thinking that, oh, if she has a marriage relationship before, she doesn't need wali and she can just act on her own because she's a grown woman. And not accurate at all. Not accurate at all. Just because she's divorced, that doesn't mean that she had become mature enough to get married without a wali. Okay, let's see. Layla, you want to say something else, Humaira? Go ahead, dear.
I'm so sorry, Sheikhat. Yeah, I wanted to add to this another question, but before adding a question, because we just learned this last week in General Institute in Fiqh class that we can, as a married woman, as a divorced woman, she can. So it's very interesting. You say we can't, but
no, I don't know. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And unfortunately, there is, here's one thing, is that when we study fiqh, okay, we come across a lot of different things that would be written as a second hand. They would say, oh, yeah, here we go. But not many would go back to the actual madhab and really see, is this really what the madhab is saying? The hadith is straightforward. أيما امرأة, and this is called al-fadh al-umum. This is al-fadh al-umum basically means it is a straightforward and a comprehensive statement that includes every woman. أيما امرأة, any woman. Any woman. Did it specify a divorcee, a widow, a virgin? Any woman. It said any woman. And the hadith is clear. فَنِكَاحُهَا بَاطِلٌ فَنِكَاحُهَا بَاطِلٌ فَنِكَاحُهَا بَاطِلٌ. And to say that a divorcee does not need a wali, absolutely false statement. No madhab said this. But madhab Hanafi did say موقوف على إجازة الولي and considered that a woman that is بالغة, عاقلة, an older woman, did consider that, yeah, that a woman can get married, but not excluding the wali. It's not even for the Hanafi madhab. They said موقوف على إجازة الولي. You can go back.
In all
The books of
cases,
Hanafi.
the wali is in me.
Absolutely. They just said موقوف على إجازة الولي. They didn't say that the wali is excluded at all. Incompletely. They said موقوف على إجازة الولي, meaning that the wali basically is aware of this, the wali is silent about it, the wali is approving it, or the wali doesn't have to be the person to necessarily be present right there, but to completely hide it away from him. And she's right there carrying on and getting married to this guy with the wali was like, why did I have no clue about this? Absolutely not mentioned by any scholar in fiqh, not the Hanafi, not the Maliki, and whoever had accused the madhab Hanafi of saying this definitely misread the madhab Hanafi.
I get it. Jazakallah khair. And Sheikha, my second question is that let's say a daughter forces her wali, is her father, to her marriage. Will that be accepted? Because the father actually does not want this marriage to take place, but in some cases he's forced to accept. Let's say the daughter says, I will the daughter gives herself the right to just how can I say it? If you don't do this, I'll do A, B, and C. So the father is forced to accept it, but he does not want to. It's not in his will, if I put it rightly. So will that be accepted?
So who's forcing the father here?
The daughter.
The daughter? Unfortunately, we're living in a society where the girls are putting their fathers in these situations where they're disgracing their fathers. This is a disgrace when the girl, it's a big disgrace when the girl basically puts her father in circumstances to make him basically be in a situation that he would give consent to something that he knows as a man that this is not in her favor, and that another man is abusing his baby. Girls, do not bring disgrace to your father. Do not bring a disgrace to your, do not be a disgrace to your fathers. Do not humiliate your fathers. And I will tell you, I do recognize, let me just stop right here for a second. I do recognize that there are certain fathers that are narcissists. I do recognize that there are certain fathers that don't care. But I would like to say one thing. The feminist agenda is making the fathers appear as if they are nothing but cruel, as if they are nothing but vicious beings that are trying to be authoritative for their own sake. There is an agenda to make and stereotype fathers as nothing but an obstacle in one's life. And this is what they even made a term for. They called it patriarchal. They called it patriarchal to make it seem like, oh, this person is nothing but a person that wants to somehow abuse his authority and not in favor of the daughter. I would like to say one thing. Fathers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the authority and gave them the instinct to care for you as his baby. That's what he feels on the inside as his obligation to be there for you no matter what. He will always feel that he's obligated to be in your support. And that's the majority. If those rare cases are brought up, this father, vicious, very narcissist, does not even care, etc., a person that is just, just caring about himself, there are those. But I would say, do not always and do not misinterpret your father being the person basically comes in, wants structure in the house and, is coming in and he's like, why is this? And then he comes in, wanting everything to be in structure. Basically, you start for confusing. Is this dad or is this a lieutenant here? Don't judge your father based on what you would see on social media, that a father is just there as really not having any role of power and just giving fake emotions. A father gives basically that structure within the household. They may seem that they are emotionless, but they just consider structure is what will bring insecurity. Structure is what brings security. Structure is what brings in organization. Organization is what brings in power. Power is what brings in emotional security, psychological security, and sometimes we may misread the power, the authority, perhaps the strength that they would be speaking in, and we may sometimes misread it and see it as somebody that is wanting to be authoritative, as somebody that just cares about his as his position. He does not care about our interest and our security and what is important to us, etc. Please bring back our fathers in our life. Bring back your father in your life. Do not disgrace your father and make him finding no other option but to accept, because
So
you were
Sheikha, in that
Oh,
regard, will it be the contract, will it be valid, the marriage contract, or will it be invalid?
here's the thing, dear. To say something is sahih in terms of contract and legality, it does not necessarily mean it is sahih in the consequence. What does that mean? The marriage contract is valid, but does that make it as the marriage that was right for you? No. Does that make it that it was valid for you, that it's valid in terms of legality? Yeah, he gave the consent, okay. But down the road, this will rise, and that you went against your father's consent, and you will be, unless this man does not have any, that is the person that she's getting married to, doesn't have any integrity, which is most likely, or else how did she get married to this man? Okay, I don't know, but then we would look into the circumstances. But unless this person has integrity, he won't bring it up and somehow just start abusing that you went against your father. You went against your father's will, therefore I can get carried away. You want to know one thing. In a man's world, in many ways, they would consider that it's power that basically would put people on track. The only reason why you were put on track, at least that man, is because they recognize the consequence. And it many times to recognize the consequence actually means to have a certain power that's putting you on track and letting you know you trespass that boundary, you're going to go through me first. That's the father. That's why the father is there putting structure, giving you dignity, giving you honor. And that's why even when men see girls walking down the street and they recognize whose daughter is she? Who's she belonging to? What institution? Because they recognize that if she's basically trespassing and going against her father, and therefore the father would basically be considered as not strong enough, because even the daughter didn't even care. She trespassed her father. The girl trespassed her father. Then me as a man, nothing to worry about. But the father's always there to say, you got to go through me first. And in the boys' world, believe it or not, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually says, وَمَا مِن دَابَّةٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَا طَائِرٍ يَطِيرُ بِجَنَاحَيْهِ إِلَّا أُمَمٌ أَمْثَالُكُمْ. No man, no animal that basically walks on earth or a bird, but they're just nations just like you. Your father was given the instinct to basically be in your protection. And saying something is sahih does not make it right for you.
I get it, Sheikha, Jazakallah khair, because I witnessed a case and wanted to know if the relationship is considered zina or is it legal in Islam.
It's legal. It's legal. Is it right? Is it
wrong?
Is it done the right way? Is it going to bring in good consequences? That's when, that's a number of different details that we'll probably see. Okay, Layla Ali, go ahead, dear.
Assalamu alaikum. My question was, are wali's only on the dad's side? And then
wali is only on the dad's side. Mother's side can never be the wali. We're going to talk about the wali in detail, okay? In lots of detail, inshallah, and even sometimes what is called adl al-wali, which is when the wali would trespass his boundaries. We're going to talk about that. Okay, Saima Khalid, go ahead, dear.
Oh, but so if it's only on the dad's side and say you only grew up with your mom's side, how can he know you to,
Il-wali is only on the dad's side, dear. It's never on the mom's side.
No, say you grew up only on your mom's side and your dad passed away and you but then
we'll talk about those details, who comes next and who comes third. Well, inshallah, we'll get there. Okay, we don't want to spill all the beans right now. Okay? We don't want to get lost. Okay, we'll talk about the wali, all of those details, inshallah. Okay, we've got Saima Khalid. Go ahead, dear.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Thank you very much for a very profound lecture, mashallah. I have a very quick question. So, what if the father is not allowing for the marriage? However, one of the brothers is taking sides with the sister, and the sister still goes ahead and marry a person of her own choice.
Okay. So the wali subject, inshallah, we'll get to it. We're still here. We still didn't, get to that subject. We're just talking about it as a bold term right now. But inshallah, we'll talk about those details later on. But just a general thing. If the father is present, no wali can override the father. Only if the father is doing adl al-wali, in other words, abusing his power, and then the qadi looks into the wali's power or looks into his defense or whatever it is and finds this basically senseless and based on the Islamic terms, then in that situation, the qadi himself will take over and say, thank you, Dad. We heard your claims. We heard your defense. but we're not going to go with approving that you have a good basis for rejecting this marriage. The Qadi himself will take over. We will never have a brother override his father, but we can have a brother override another brother. Okay, we'll talk about the wali part in detail. There's a lot to say about wali. Okay. The other part, which basically is in order to say a valid marriage contract, we were talking about two witnesses. Now, when we talk about the two witnesses, for the Maliki madhab, they regarded, no, it's not two witnesses. That makes no sense. Those two witnesses do not make a valid marriage contract. Okay, Malikis, what makes a valid marriage contract? They said, no, it's not the two witnesses, but it's actually the wedding itself. Those are the witnesses. What do you mean? So we mean that everybody is right there witnessing in this hall, this wedding day, that Khalid is getting married to Simon. That's it. This is what we're here to announce. Okay, then in that situation, for the Malikis, they didn't say that we don't need witnesses, but they said we need a larger number of witnesses, not necessarily two. For the majority, they considered two witnesses that basically would witness the marriage contract, and they would be the ones to basically have to be aqil, meaning that they are understanding. So we don't have somebody that has a mental illness. No, this person understands the marriage contract, understands these two, and the wali is there. And that's basically to say, of course, the two witnesses are not making this marriage as a secret marriage. We're going to talk about something called zawaj urfi. Does that mean a secret marriage, or does that mean an unregistered marriage? Just a hint. There's no such thing as a secret marriage in Islam. Yet, there can be a marriage if it has the wali, we've got the witnesses, we got the consent from both sides. Yes, this is a Muslim woman getting married to a Muslim man. Okay, the wali was basically agreeing that, okay, we understand that you are married to a first wife and this is a second wife. The wali was consenting, everything is in place. He's like, I understand you don't want to make a wedding, you don't want to, make a big thing about this because you're not yet ready to confront your first wife and not ready to basically get it within that area. We understand that, so we can just make it a private ceremony. We can make it a private marriage. Hey, you probably brought four maybe of your friends, and I'll probably bring her brothers, and we'll just make, just this announcement right there. Okay, and we're not going to make it public yet. Is this making it a haram relationship? The answer is no. If we mean by this secret, then this is not haram. But if we mean by secret that there were two friends on campus, and those were supposedly the witnesses, and we had the woman right there basically say, Zawajtuka nafsi, I got myself married to you, and this guy, shyly says, I agree, okay? And then they would say that this is a marriage and a secret marriage. There is no question, no scholar, not even half a scholar, ever said that this was a halal relationship. This is plain zina, plain zina. There's no question about it. Or to say a woman tells the guys, Zawajtuka nafsi, and in a hotel, this is zina, this is ridiculous. This is zina. There's no such thing as this being called zawaj urfi. This is what they'll call it. This is not zawaj urfi. Zawaj al-urfi is an unregistered marriage. So what does that look like? An unregistered marriage, meaning we basically recognize, for example, in America, for example, okay, it's not exclusive to that, okay, that if you were to get married in a polygamous relationships are illegal in America, and this woman decided to go get married at the masjid. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean we're talking about the premise. We're not talking about the premise. We're talking about the imam, that is the specialist. Basically, the wali is there, the witnesses are there, the imam basically says, we're going to make this marriage, but we're not going to register it through the state because I already have a marriage with my first wife registered through the state, and this is illegal. So the only way that I could do this is that we can have a masjid document. So we just have a masjid document. That's all we have. Not that I would recommend this, but I'm just letting you know what's valid and what's not valid, and I'm giving you an idea of what a urfi would look like. So we're not having it registered legally in the state, but we just have it done at the masjid. We had it done at the masjid. The wali was there. The consent was given. And we did a little wedding even at the masjid. We passed out popcorn and what else? Well, let me see, a pizza and all, and had some drinks. Okay, good luck. Okay, that's what we did. That was our marriage ceremony. Okay, fair enough. Mubarak. Okay, this is valid. This is valid. Okay, this is urfi, yet this is valid. If we understand the terms right, that's when we're going to be basically understanding the details right. And this is what happens many times. Many times people would come in, even people that may be shaykhat or whatever it is, they would say, hey, if a woman that is divorced basically gets married without a wali, then the marriage is valid, according to Hanafi madhab. Absolutely wrong. Absolutely wrong. Unfortunately, sometimes we would have people come in and not have the accurate reading even for that madhab. Just because something is famous within a certain culture doesn't make it the actual madhab. Okay, so I hope I explained that one. Did I actually answer the question that was asked? Let me see. Okay, let me see. The sister is saying, subhanAllah, I've heard this line reasoning so much for no need of a wali for a divorced woman or a woman who is considered a grown enough. Like I said, it's some that would claim that it was Hanafi, and that if she's basically a baligha and a woman that is divorced, that she doesn't need a wali, but that's actually not accurate. Again, this is not accurate, and the wali basically would be mawqufun ala ijazat al-wali. So the wali would basically be informed. The wali would basically have the right to even say, well, let me see, you object or reject or approve this, but not entirely that, she could just go on as if the wali is not there. Where do most people get this, that divorce? Like I said, they get it from misreading sometimes. Like when you say mawqufun ala ijazat al-wali, many would not understand the usul al-fiqh. Let me explain this one. Many would read fiqh statements, but if they're not specialized in usul al-fiqh and not really understanding the madhab itself in the terms of that madhab, this can be misunderstood. I'll give you an example. For the Hanbali, they will say that khamr is makruh. They will say khamr is makruh. Somebody that doesn't have ilm usul al-fiqh of that madhab, they will say, look, they said it's makruh. They said it was haram. Therefore, there are differences of opinions. And that's when, of course, what they don't understand is that the Hanbali madhab may use the word makruh as a synonym, basically to mean to mean that it is haram. This doesn't mean that they mean that it's makruh, meaning hated, and that you won't be sent for it. In the other madhahib, they will use the word haram to mean a specific definition, makruh to mean a specific definition. So it's very important to understand the meanings, the technical meanings, and what they mean by that. The madhab Hanafi said mawqufun ala ijazat al-wali. This mawquf actually means it's not talking about anybody standing, meaning that this would not be considered as approved until the wali would approve it. Then the madhab Hanafi, he basically gave a bigger list for the fathers to object basically this marriage in situations where we would look at the qualifications into basically this person and whether he approves him or not. Unlike the other madhahib, they basically had a smaller list that a father can basically come in and do what is called a ta'n. What is a ta'n? A ta'n doesn't mean stabbing, but a ta'n basically means objection. That the wali can come in and say, objection, here's why I don't approve this marriage, Your Honor. What about this guy? Why don't you approve it? Well, basically, he doesn't have a job. He can't even sustain my daughter. The qadi will look and say, do you have a job, sir? No, but sometimes I would basically, work here and there, and that's gonna sustain me. The qadi will say, no, I need pay stubs. I need the evidence and proof of work, proof of income, because the father has a point. You don't work. I need proof of income. Then the qadi will say, nope, we're going to delay this because the father has a point here. We need proof of income. All right. But let's say he's got proof of income. He's got everything in place. Then the qadi will say, okay, why do you disapprove of this? Let's say the man said, well, I'm Afghan and I am Pashto. And guess what? We are Pashto. We are real men. And this guy, he comes from a different tribe, and he can never be somebody that is suitable for my daughter. He's either Pashto or not. Now, majority of the scholars will say, sorry, we absolutely adore the Pashto. We love the Pashtos, but the majority of the scholars will say, we love you, but, the Hanafis will say, yes. Okay, hold on, let me, all right. I'm trying to reword the sentence, okay? The majority of the scholars will say, yes, that's a good objection. Because at the end of the day, culture does matter. Some scholars from the majority of the scholars will say objection, or basically the wali's objection, is not approved. And they will consider that just because you're Pashto and this man is probably, I don't know, Kazakh, it doesn't necessarily mean, hey, all Muslims are basically going to be adl. They're all basically going to be pious unless proven otherwise. Do you have an objection about his deen? Do you have an objection that he drinks, that he basically does drugs, anything of that sort? No, I don't. So sorry, she's a Pashto Muslim. I'm sure she's, of a great lineage, but this Kazakh guy is also a pious Muslim. That's all that matters. So majority of the scholars will basically say, yes, we're going to approve this, except some scholars from the majority, okay? The Hanafi will say, I am sorry, but the father has a point. The Hanafi will say, the father has a point. When you look at culture, Pashtun culture has its own language, has its own culture in a number of different things, and has their own, I guess, vision and how they define what makes a man, what makes a woman, all these different things. And this Kazakh person, he comes from a completely different mindset. And the father's objection is that, hey, if he comes from a different mindset, then we're talking about a number of different obstacles in communication between my daughter and this man, which actually puts my daughter at risk of having a failed marriage. Hanafi madhab will say, you know what? You've got a point right there. Marriage is called out. We're not going to validate this marriage. Thank you, sir, for coming over. And thank you, dear daughter. Maybe you should find a Pashtu to make sure that you basically would come in accordance with your dad's vision of what actually makes the right thing for you. That's the Hanafi. The Hanafi will say, sorry, but yeah. Now we look into when we say موقوف على إجازة الولي, the wali would have a bigger area to object. They'll give them almost 14 different issues to say, do you see out of these 14, it's almost 14, give or take, 14, 18 different issues. And they'll say, do you see anything that you would object on these 14 different issues? Versus the majority of the scholars, they probably only have 7 or 8. But the Hanafi will say, you know what, we've got 14, 15 different issues. And that way, when we say that a woman can get married without her wali, we're talking about that he would know that he would have the right to come forward and say, objection, my daughter got married to this man or is getting married to this man, but here's my objection on this. Then the Qadi will look into it and say, okay, we see what you're saying. You've got 14, 15, 16, 18 different matters that you can object. But no Hanafi ever said that, yeah, she can just get married and just disrespect her father and disregard her father. And yeah, she doesn't even need a wali. She's right there living on her own. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Misreading the madhahib itself. Okay, let's see. And we've got some other questions. I know that, you know, when something is so commonly said, you know, just like, for example, it's so common that people would say on the pulpit that if a woman is a working woman, that she doesn't have to pay a single dime or a single penny on the household. And they'll say that that's what Islam says. That's actually not accurate either. I know. It feels good if I were to say, my money is my money and your money is yours, is mine. And you had, somebody that is a famous da'iyah basically use that, your money is my money and my money is mine. And therefore, that's actually not necessarily true in fiqh. We're going to get to in details on that, inshallah. But, it's so common that people would misunderstand fiqh in the terms in fiqh. Okay, let's see. Now we're going to get to the other part. Let me see what you can say. And here we go. We're going to get to this one, which is who the women men cannot get married to. In other words, we're talking about who are the forbidden women to get proposed to. This is extremely important. The women that men cannot propose to. In other words, we're talking about basically what is considered 2 things. Number 1, there is a permanent mahram, a permanent woman that the man can never get married to, and there's a temporary. Stop right here. Permanent and temporary. We're going to get to those details. Number 1, in general, every woman that one is not allowed to get married to temporarily or permanently, he's not allowed to propose to. Okay? Let's get in details. Now, when you look at those details, we've got 4 different types. Number 1, close relatives due to blood relations. 2, close relatives due to marital relations. which is in Arabic called al-musahara. 3, close relations due to milk relations, meaning basically بالرضاع. Certain women due to certain cases. Now, let's go in details with each and every single one. Let's go with the blood relations. When we're speaking about blood relations, we're talking about one. Hold on. We're talking about a woman. What? Hold on. Let me see if I get that for you. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Oh dear. Okay, let's get to that one. Woman due to blood relations would be the mother, okay, the sister, the mother. Let's do it this way, actually. We're going to draw this drawing, okay? Here we go. We've got the man right there, okay? I know, my stick guy is, yeah. All right, we've got the man, his mother, that's blood relations, okay? Here we go. And there's the mother, okay? Then all the above, grandmother, great-grandmother, etc., all of those are basically considered the mothers. 2, basically all the aunties, whether paternal aunt or maternal aunt, paternal aunt or maternal aunt, okay?
I can't see the drawing. Is it only me?
Can't see the drawing?
Mm-mm.
Oh dear. Oh wow. Wonder why. Oh, you really can't see it. Oh wow. Wonder why. Let me see. Why can't you see the drawing? Oh, subhanallah. All right, that's okay. All right, we'll do. Okay. Wonder why you can't see.
It seems you have selected white color because I can see your like pen like pointer for writing.
Can you
I
see
think
red?
this-
Can you see red scribbles?
No.
No.
Oh,
I mean, are you sure you have selected red color?
yes, I have. Hold on. Let me see what's going on here.
If you want, I can put some like you see.
Let me see. Oh, so
this
why is
it
yours
is
scribbling? Hold on, let
it
me
is
see.
working.
Oh yeah, yours is working. Hold on, let me see. Let's do
I
this.
think you have selected white color.
Well, you know what? Let me reselect, even though it's not
I
actually.
think you have to like hold on to the pen because maybe when you scribble it lets go, then it erases.
Let's see. Can you see what I'm doing right now?
Yeah,
Red?
yes.
Okay,
Now
good.
we
Yes,
Good. Got it in place. Okay, good. All right. So let's do it right now. Okay, so we got this guy right there. Okay, so we're looking at his mother, okay, and his great mother, well, his grandmother and his great-great-grandmother. Okay, so all
again
of
we
those,
can't.
you still
see.
can't?
No,
Oh
again. I
dear.
mean, it appears some like,
Oh,
but
you know what?
now
I got a different way. I got a different way. Don't worry. I got a different way. Let's use this one now. Okay. How about now? Now you can see it?
No, Sheikha.
Oh dear. Let me see what's going on.
I think you are not using Zoom. You are using
Yeah, we
yeah,
can see
yes,
you.
now we can see. Are you using your PDF pen or you are using
Right.
Zoom?
That I decided to use the PDF pen and not the Zoom
Okay.
pen. Yeah. So, okay. I guess we, as long as it works. So if we have this person, basically the mother and the grandmother, basically all the way up, okay? And then we have basically the aunts, whether paternal aunt or whether maternal aunt. Those would also be considered as mahram, okay? Then we also have the sisters, whether the sisters, we're talking about sisters, meaning biological, they're called shaqiqa. What is shaqiqa? Shaqiqa means you share mother and father with. There is also what is called ukht li and ukht li ab, meaning that she's basically a sister that is that you share mother with, or a sister that you share father with. All of those are still considered sisters. Okay, so ukht li or ukht li ab. So basically, all types of sisters. Okay, all types of sisters basically are also mahram. And then we go basically the underneath. Basically, we're talking about the person's daughters and the sister's daughters as well. All the sister's daughters are also mahram to this person. Okay, so looking at that, all this person's mothers.
Sheikha, we can't see your drawing again.
Oh, really? Oh dear. Okay, well, that's all right. I mean, I'll make it into words. Number one, so we got mothers, which would mean mother's mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, and up. 2, aunts, maternal aunts, paternal aunts. 3, sisters, biological sisters from sharing mother and father, or sisters sharing mother alone or sharing father alone. And their daughters. So we're talking about nieces. 5, we're talking about one's own daughters, one's granddaughters, all of those are mahram. Those would be the mahram through blood relations. 2, is blood transfusion included? No. Blood transfusion is not included. Marital relations, we're talking about the wife now relations. We're talking about 1, the mother's wife, my wife's mother, that would be a mahram. Same thing. My husband's father is my mahram. My husband's father and my mother is my husband's mahram. 2 are my aunts. Hold on. We're basically looking at that branching out. Are my aunts? Those are temporarily mahrams. Temporarily, not permanently. My sisters, those are temporarily, not permanently. My daughter, which is, let's say, from a previous marriage, my daughter would be considered what is called rabiba. Hold on to the rabiba for a bit, okay? Hold on to the rabiba for a bit. My daughter would basically be a permanent mahram for my husband, who is not her father, but is her stepfather, okay? Now, those would be through marital relations. What about my husband's grandfather? My husband's grandfather is also considered a mahram to me. What about my mother's mother? My mother's mother and above is a mahram to my husband. Got it? Is a mahram to my husband. So through marital relations, we're talking about the wife, we're talking about the mother, the mothers and the fathers of both sides. So my husband's fathers, when I say fathers, we're talking about father, great grandfather, okay? My mother's mothers, basically, all of those would be a mahram to my husband. My daughters would be a mahram to my husband. Let's say from a previous relationship. My husband's sons would be mahram to me. My husband's sons are a mahram to me as a woman, okay? Basically the wife, okay? So those would be mahram, okay? Now, what about my husband's brothers? Not a mahram at all. What about my sisters? Temporary mahram. What do you mean by temporary? Meaning, he cannot marry my sister while he's in a marriage bond with me. Does that mean she has to wear hijab in front of him? Absolutely. Same thing with my aunt, maternal aunt, paternal aunt. He cannot be getting married to them while he's in a marriage bond with me. Why not? The Prophet ﷺ had said, if you are to do that, you will disconnect the family bond the family bonds within those relationships. What does that mean? That co-wives, don't expect them to be sisters and don't expect them to be lovey-dovey. Don't expect that to happen. Don't be too utopian. There's a reality. If the Prophet ﷺ had basically said, إِنَّكُمْ إِن فَعَلْتُمْ ذَلِكُمْ قَطَّعْتُمْ أَوْصَالَكُمْ, if you were going to make this woman's co-wife be her sister, even if she approves it, قَطَّعْتُمْ أَوْصَالَكُمْ, you would bring about these disconnections between your family, between your family bonds, because there's a reality. The woman is going to be getting jealous from her co-wife. Don't get too utopian and think that they'll be friends and they'll be okay and she's approving it, etc. There's a reality. There's something in nature. So now we look at all the marital relations just right there. Now, the relationship between the husband and the mother-in-law. Pay attention to this one. Once the marriage contract is done between myself and this potential man, now husband, okay? Once the marriage contract is done, that's enough to make my mother a forever mahram. But if there was a marriage contract between this man and my mother, but then not fully consummated, in other words, they didn't fully get married, then in that situation, if let's say they don't go forward with this marriage, then in that situation, he can get married to the girl. And that would be permissible, but not the other way around. Why not? Because the mother, if she doesn't get married to the man, she won't hold grudges on her daughter because she would still consider her daughter as basically so dear to her, she won't hold that grudge. But the other way is not true. If this man was about to get married to this girl and they had a marriage contract, and then he decided to end the marriage contract to go to the mother, the girl will never forgive her mother that she considers that she took a potential candidate. And that would basically be considered as what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us and teaches us about what is acceptable. Let's say, dude, okay, I could see a lot of questions rising right there. Hold on, let's say, I can't either, okay, can't, okay, the drawing, yeah, I know, I stopped the drawing because my art is not available. Okay, at least, and not to mention that my art is horrible anyway, so. All right, let's continue right there. What about due to milk relations? Now, يحرم من الرضاع ما يحرم من النسب. What does that mean? There's a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ had said that what makes the relationship, so you saw the dynamic and we said the mothers, the aunties, etc., all of that, يحرم من الرضاع ما يحرم من النسب. What would make a relationship basically in the dynamic that we mentioned, we would apply the same on milk. What we're talking about, Kemp's milk, and no, we're not talking about that kind of milk. We're talking about nursing milk. We'll talk about nursing in just a bit. Okay. Now, nursing. So what does that mean? Let's say this woman nursed Ahmed. Maybe I should make, I'll share a different screen with you so you could see it. Okay. Okay. That way you'll get an idea. Okay. And that way I won't abuse you for not being visual. Okay. Let's say, here we go. We're going to share another screen. Okay. There we go. Now you should be able to see my drawing in just a bit. I still didn't start with my drawing. Okay. Let's see. Can you see any drawing?
No, we
No,
can't, Sheikha.
Until now. Oh dear, what's going on?
no.
Huh, that's weird. Hmm. How about now?
No.
Oh dear. La ilaha illallah. Wonder what
Are
happened.
you using Zoom colors
Yes,
now?
I'm using the Zoom one. So how come you guys get to draw and I don't get to draw?
Yes.
Right? Let's see. Maybe I can take off the annotate and then click it on.
Can you try a Zoom like whiteboard, classic whiteboard?
Well, that's exactly what I'm doing. It's kind of weird.
No. You have opened the Word file, like blank Word file. No, you haven't opened the Zoom board.
Can you see anything now?
No, we can see your pointer, like it changed to the stylus, but it doesn't write anything.
How about if I draw? Let me see if I were to draw using this. Can you see anything now?
Yes, now you are
Oh,
using
okay.
actually Word of
Right,
like
right.
color
So
and
that's
all
what
that.
I'll do then. That's what I'll do then. Okay, that's what I'll do. I'll just use then this one. Okay.
Yes.
Now, when we say يحرم من الرضاع ما يحرم من النسب, what are we actually talking about here? Okay, we're talking about the same exact way. Let's say right there, I'm going to draw another guy. Okay, maybe I should go move forward. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. So let's say this is Ahmed. Okay, and Ahmed, who nursed him? We're talking about, let's call her Wafa. We'll just put a W, and this is Ahmed right there. We'll just call him Ahmed right there. Okay. Ahmed was nursed by Wafa. Wafa nursed him for 10 times. Okay. Wafa has children of her own. These children of her own, let's say we've got Amal right there. Amal, okay, we'll just call her Meme right there. Okay, sorry, but my fingers are not doing the best. Okay, Amal right there. And we also have, let's see, his other brother was Malik. Okay, I don't know why okay, here's Malik. Okay, now, Ahmad, even though he was basically the biological brother for, I don't know, let's give him a name, Sandy. Okay, here we go. We'll just put the letter C, Sandy right there. He's the biological son of Sandy. Okay, biological son of Sandy, but then he was nursed from Wafa. Okay, now, Sandy has other kids of her own. Let's see, other kids of her own. And we've got other kids, let's call him Majid. Okay. I don't know why I'm stuck with the letters that begin with meme. Okay. Let's call him Majid. And we've got another sister. And that's, let's see, that's Maria. Okay. Here we go. Here's Majid and Maria right there. Okay. There we go. All right. Let's see. So what happened? So Ahmad's biological brother is Majid and biological sister is Maria. But he was nursed from Wafa, and therefore Amal is his milk sister, and so is Malik his milk brother. Got Malik and Majid, Malik and Amal are his milk sisters. Now, Ahmad is considered the son of Wafa through milk relations. And Amal and Malik are his milk brothers and milk siblings. Now, Majid and Maria here, they have nothing to do with Wafa. It was only Ahmad that suckled Wafa's milk. So Majid is not a mahram to Amal. Neither is Maria a mahram to Malik. They have nothing to do with all of this. They have nothing to do with all of this. The only one that has something to do with this is basically Ahmad. Ahmad can not only just be considered as a mahram to Wafa, but even her husband, if we were to assume Ahmad was a girl, even Wafa's husband would be a mahram to this girl. So even if we are to assume Ahmad was a girl, Wafa's husband would be her mahram. Okay? Now, let's also say Ahmad, okay, is he related to Wafa's mother? Yes, that's his grandmother. What about Wafa's sisters? Those are his aunts. What about Wafa's husband's sisters? Those are his aunts too. What about Malik's kids? Those are his nephews and nieces. What about Amal's kids? Those are his nieces too. So يحرم من الرضاع ما يحرم من النسب. The same idea that we would do with biological relations, it would apply to milk relations. Yet, important to mention, scholars had differences of opinions on the number of suckling. For the Hanafi, they said even if it's a drop of milk went into the baby or Ahmad's mouth, that's enough to make a milk relations. For the majority, they said not true. Why not? They said we've got a hadith in Sahih Muslim that said لا تحرم المصة ولا المصتان but 5 رضعات مشبعات, but 5 complete feedings. How do we know if the baby is completely fed or not? So you feed the baby and then the baby starts looking around like he's full. Or you needed to, well, the baby is not looking around because he's too young. He's only 2 months. So you basically burped the baby and the baby burped, and that means he's basically completed his feeding. Now he's not crying anymore. Then we know the baby is all fed. Okay, that's one. And we're going to get 5 and up. Another hadith said, but the ones in the rad'a, or the suckling that would be considered as making the relationship basically haram or halal, would be what made the bones and the flesh basically form, which is 5 readings, which is 5 feedings. Okay, now we go back to our slide right there and actually look at milk relations in certain women due to certain cases. What does that look like? A woman during her waiting period. What do you mean by during her waiting period? So we've got different cases that puts a woman on a waiting period. What's a waiting period? A waiting period basically means a time that if we're talking about a woman that had basically her husband die, she's a widow, then in that situation, a woman's waiting period would be for 4 months and 10 days. Now, during that time, her husband is never going to be able to come back to her. Can she have somebody propose to her, or even they would talk about her and say, hey, we were interested, and here it is. Malik comes in and he's like, since your husband died, remember, once your waiting period is done, I'd like to come and propose to you. Absolutely haram. I mean, he didn't get married to her. What's up? Yeah, well, you're right. He didn't propose. At least this is considered a direct proposal. So you mean an indirect proposal is permissible? Yes, an indirect proposal is permissible in the case of a widow. What does an indirect proposal look like? That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي مَا عَرَّضْتُمْ به من خطبة النساء. It would be permissible if we're talking about figurative proposal. What does a figurative proposal mean? Meaning that it's an indirect one. So saying things, well, you're a pious woman, many will be interested in you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, will bring you a better situation. He's really giving an insinuation that he's interested, an indirect wording that he's interested, but he didn't say it explicitly. He didn't say, since your husband died, remember, I was actually interested in you for a very long time, but you got married to this guy. I mean, my condolences to your husband, to your late husband, but actually, I'm really taking this seriously. So once your waiting period is finished, remember, I'm really interested in you. That would be absolutely haram. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي مَا عَرَّضْتُمْ بِهِ مِنْ خِطْبَةِ النِّسَاءِ. What is permissible is only one thing, which is basically the proposals that are not figurative. Sorry, what is haram is I'm trying to understand. Somebody is sending me things in the chat. Oh, okay, here we go. What is permissible is the non-explicit ones in a situation only for the widow. Only for the women, for the widow. Now, let's go for the other type. If we're talking about another type of waiting period, which is if the woman is pregnant. If the woman is pregnant, the waiting period would be until she would give delivery, until she would get her baby. Okay, that's when that would be considered as the end of her waiting period if she's pregnant. If she's not pregnant, 4 months and 10 days. If she is pregnant, until she would get her baby. Okay, now, if she is divorced, we would look into these cases. Number one, if she gets a cycle, then we would say she would have to wait 3 menstrual cycles. That would be her waiting period. Now, if she is married, and let's say her husband divorces her, it would be absolutely haram to propose to a woman during her waiting period. So let's say she gets cycles and her husband divorced her. I don't know why she's at her family's house, unless it was the final third divorce. But before that, in the first divorce and the second divorce, she should be at her husband's house. Okay, during the waiting period. But that's a whole big conversation to talk about later on. Okay, the 3 menstrual cycles during that time, we're talking about the first divorce and the second divorce. She would be within the marriage household, not at her parents' house. During the waiting period, she would be at her husband's household, at her household, her home. That's where she would be. Okay? No man can come in and actually propose for that woman. Differences of opinions between scholars if the third divorce takes place, whether she can get a proposal or not, at least in a figurative way. Okay, let's see another one. A pregnant woman, if she is divorced and she was pregnant, then not until she gets her baby. So same as a widow, no pregnant woman can get married. Okay, divorce, if we're speaking about before consummation. So they had a marriage contract, but there was no consummation. In other words, they were never intimate. Then in that situation, there would be no iddah, no relationship whatsoever. Let's see, the third one, or the final one. A woman, she basically passed through her menopause, or she was probably too young to get married, okay? But ironically, she got married, or let's say she got, one period and never got it again because, of course, she was too young, okay? Then in that situation, she would wait 3 months, or is it until she would get another cycle? For the girl that only got one period, we would basically do further testing. But for the woman that went through menopause and basically does not get any periods, then she would wait 3 months. A woman that never got a period, she would wait 3 months. So why 3 months? Because that's about the time in case when let's say there was a pregnancy of any sort, within 3 months, you should see, the belly bump or anything of that sort, and should give me basically a sign. Is that the same for khulu'? Is that the same for fasq, etc.? Differences of opinions between scholars. We'll get to that later on, inshallah. Okay, now we go for this one. As for the woman that had been divorced, the third divorce, some scholars say that she takes the same ruling as the widow. Women that are in the second or first divorce. Okay, hold on. I know some of you are like first and second divorce. Remember, let me draw I can't draw anymore. Okay, let me explain this one. In a divorce, when a divorce happens, let me see, what time is it? 11:52? No, I shouldn't go in details with this one yet. Yeah, because that one is a lot of details. We'll talk about that one later. Let's go for the other slide. We'll talk about that one later. Okay, what about the woman that is engaged? Is it permissible to propose to an engaged woman? What does an engaged woman actually mean? Engagement basically means that there was a promise that was given to this man that they will be getting married. But one thing that's very common, people thinking that if an engagement happens, that she basically can go out together, go to coffee, probably take beautiful photo shoots and all of that. And that, the only thing that's not permissible is basically to be intimate. Absolutely wrong. This man is not considered married until they actually do the marriage contract. Therefore, conversations during the engagement or during, let's say, the initial wording of engagement, or even if they were to make it official engagement, they made a party and they basically, passed out cakes and whatever it is, all of these different things, that's not a marriage. That's not a marriage. Okay? A marriage has a special wording. زوجتك and قبلت. Not until the wali says زوجتك بنتي and the guy says قبلت, I approve, are we going to be considering that a marriage had taken place? All right. Now, just because the father says, we're going to go on with this marriage, inshallah, we searched his background and we read the Fatiha according to some cultures, we exchanged gifts, that's not a marriage. So can she dress up in front of him and all of that? The answer is no. She cannot dress up in front of him. They cannot sit together and start exchanging text messages, I love you, and all of these different things. All of these emotional talks are not permissible. And they cannot be alone in I don't know, going together on to a coffee shop and or even walking down, I don't know, the neighborhood or whatever it is. Absolutely not. Not until you basically make a marriage contract. Until now, right now, since you didn't have a marriage contract, he's basically like any other man on the street. Like any other man on the street. Can she take off her hijab in front of him for him to get a better look before he makes the final marriage contract? We'll talk about that later, inshallah. All right. Let's say, so the question still didn't get answered. Is it permissible to propose to an engaged woman? Number one, the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يخطب الرجل على خطبة أخيه حتى ينكح أو يترك. as al-Bukhari had said. Or the Prophet ﷺ, some Sahaba, Umar ibn Khattab said, نهى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أن يبيع بعضهم على بعض ولا يخطب الرجل على خطبة أخيه حتى يترك الخاطب أو يأذن له. In a hadith, basically the Prophet ﷺ had said, no man should propose over his brother's proposal unless he marries or withdraws the proposal. Okay, now, scholars actually had differences of opinions on, let's just say, person A, let's say Tawfiq. Okay, Tawfiq, he proposed to girl Wafa, and they said, yeah, sure. He said, you know, I'm going to go to UK. I'm going to basically work there. You know, and the dad basically gave a promise, said, yep, we'll be waiting for you. We're going to consider this as this girl is yours. And of course, even if there is WhatsApp, the girl is not going to be exchanging. She knows her. She's a good girl. She's a good Muslimah. She knows that Islamically, it's not permissible that they would be exchanging love notes and exchanging all these conversations, even through WhatsApp and even through that. She took the Fiqh of Marriage class. She is a wise girl. Okay, now, but the father gave a word, and the father told Tawfiq that, okay, next year, 2026, you'll basically... we'll be waiting for you. And he said, you know, by then I should have a good amount of money to come back and get married to Wafa. Wafa got a new proposal. This guy, an engineer and good looking, got the money, got the degree, and plus definitely not something that you would basically refuse. Even though this person named Ahmed, he knew that she was engaged to Tawfiq, but he was like, you know, I think I have better qualities and I would just come in and I'm sure they won't reject me because, yeah, I've got all the good qualities. Ahmed comes in, dad is seeing all of this and he's like, yeah, you know what? Sure, we're going to go for this. Yeah, he's definitely a better candidate than Tawfiq. We did give him a word, but I guess we'll just go for this. Here we go. Wafa gets married to Ahmed, and they go in for the marriage. Tawfiq comes a year later, comes back, and he's like, hey, where's my girl? I thought you gave me a word. Dad says, well, I mean, yeah, but Ahmed came over and all of that, and we basically got him married to her. Now, all scholars would agree that one, what Ahmed had done, if he knew that Tawfiq was already engaged to her, that Ahmed had committed a sin because the Prophet ﷺ said, do not propose over your Muslim brother's proposal. Number two, the father is held accountable for breaking the promise and not being man enough to keep his word. The girl is held accountable for moving on with this. Now, then scholars had debated on the implication of this relationship. Is this a valid marriage or is this not a valid marriage? Majority of the scholars, they said, just like the Maliki, as long as I guess they're the most ones that stick out in this conversation, they said, well, they said that the marriage in itself is valid, but he's at sin. He's at sin for basically betraying the promise. So they'll be held accountable for betraying the promise. But the marriage itself is valid. Is it a pseudo? Well, the only ones that called something as a pseudo invalid or a pseudo valid are the Hanafis. Okay, but the Hanafis, they considered it as valid, and they considered it as as valid, and they're held accountable for breaking the promise, but it's still a valid marriage. Okay, other scholars, they considered that ما بني على الباطل فهو باطل. They said if it was built upon an invalid proposal, then this is an invalid marriage. And that was some of the Malikis too. By the way, remember, sometimes there would be multiple opinions in one madhab. Multiple opinions in one madhab. So in the Maliki madhab, you had multiple opinions in that regards. Yes, some Malikis considered that, well, no, this was upon an invalid proposal, and therefore we need to teach people how to have integrity and keep their words, and therefore this is invalid. And what they were supposed to do was inform Tawfiq and tell him, you know, where we need to end this proposal. It's not going to work out, and just end it. But don't let Tawfiq, you know, thinking that he's going to come back and everything's all set and then discover and break his heart. Don't do that. All right. Now, so why is it not allowed? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنِ اتَّقَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, don't praise yourself. He knows who the true ones of religious integrity are. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا. And do not speak ill of one another. In other words, do not respect other people and disrespect them behind their back. And certainly you may not have said anything bad about Tawfiq, but just to say that you come in and present yourself that you are better, that's a form of that you're claiming to somehow be a person that is more worthy of Tawfiq. That's absolutely, absolutely haram. And the other one is that it enhances animosity, greed, gossip, plots, and self-praise between the members of the society. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَعْتَدُوا إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُعْتَدِينَ. Don't transgress the limits, for the Lord Almighty does not love the transgressors. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ بِغَيْرِ مَا اكْتَسَبُوا فَقَدْ احْتَمَلُوا بُهْتَانًا وَإِثْمًا مُبِينًا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and those that harm the believing men and the believing women for something that they had not committed, then what they had carried on their backs is nothing but blasphemy and nothing but sin over their backs. So what happens in that situation? Like we said, for Maliki and Hanbali, when I say Ahmad, I mean Hanbali, they considered it, at least some Malikis, not all, they considered it as invalid. But then for the Hanafi and the Shafi'i and some, and I want you to see right there, you were like, wait a minute, so why did you say Ahmad 2 times? So does that mean the Hanbali madhab has 2 different opinions? Yes, the Hanbali, or sometimes one madhab, can have multiple opinions. That's the same for the Hanafi, that's the same for the Maliki, that's the same for the Hanbali. So yes, you can have more than one opinion in one madhab. So for the Hanbali and even the Maliki, by the way, they had multiple opinions within that madhab. Some Hanbalis also said it was valid, and just like the Hanafi and the Shafi'i. But all scholars agreed that the action itself is forbidden and they would be sinned for it. But then they debated whether this would mean invalid relationship, meaning an invalid marriage contract, or whether it's a valid marriage contract. Okay, so this is it for today. Okay, I know I still didn't answer the question that the sister had asked. I promised that I would answer it today. If a woman realizes that marriage had become obligatory upon her, yet she fell into mistakes, she tried her best, but in vain, what should she do? Although she observes fasting and other acts of worship, matters still go wrong. Okay. I'm trying to understand when she says she fell into mistakes and matters still go wrong. I wonder if she means zina, or whether she means masturbation, or whether she means looking at things like porn and what that means. So I'm going to lay out the different categories here. Number 1, if she realizes that marriage is obligatory on her, then in that situation, she should inform her wali. She should inform her wali. If she's too shy to inform her wali, inform your mother. Talk to your mother. Let that relationship between you and your mother or your older sister or your auntie to basically explain it to your wali that it's important for you to get married. Let's say your father is still not taking the matter seriously. It's okay, talk about that. Then you're going for the second one, which is let people know, let the women know you're interested in getting married. Let the women know. So how do we say that? Well, I mean, you can say that directly and say, tell people if you know somebody that is right for me, I'm here, I'm available, or stuff like that. So basically, let people know you're interested in getting married. I know in some cultures that is perceived as qillat adab or lacking manners, but there are intelligent and wise ways to do it. So in other words, perhaps tell somebody that you trust, let's say an auntie that you trust her wisdom, and then basically let her be. Let's consider if your mother is not available, and let's say you couldn't tell your mother, maybe a wise auntie, tell her to basically be, let's call it like a godmother type of thing. Okay. Of course, not God, of course, but it's like somebody that is like a person that really cares for you, like an advisor, etc. So then I would then say, well, let that auntie speak on your behalf if you're shy to speak on your behalf of yourself. It's permissible to say and announce it to the women, hey, I'm interested in getting married. Let's say this also is in a more open culture. So can you go to the masjid, for example, to sign up there that you're interested in getting married? Can you also, with the knowledge of your wali, basically sign up perhaps online? And my recommendation, don't sign up yourself online, but let your auntie, or let's say she doesn't understand English or whatever, okay, then perhaps put them on board as if they are searching for you. So you would be writing, and then let your aunties or your mom or basically your father be on board for you, and don't let it be that you're the one that's searching. Why not? Because when you put yourself that you are the one that's searching, unfortunately, I'll tell you, as an ex-matchmaker, as a previous matchmaker, I'll tell you, many guys would not take your matter seriously. But when it's a third party, they usually take it more seriously, and they will approach in a way that they understand their grounds, they understand their borders. But when it's you directly, wallahi, guys will trespass their boundaries. And I had done matchmaking for almost 12 years. Trust me, whenever a man is on board, and whenever your mother and your family is on board, the guy will come and actually recognize his boundaries, his borders, and act and behave seriously. And I mean it. I've been doing this for 12 years. I've done it for a long time, and I've dealt directly with those guys. I've dealt directly with those women. Trust me, they will take you more seriously, and they will watch their borders, especially if that macho man daddy is on the board. Wallahi, when dad is on the board, even if you know that dad is not this mighty dad, but just by them knowing that dad is on the board, those guys, they will recognize not to trespass their boundaries with you. Uqsim billahi al-azim. They take your dad seriously. They will give you more weight, and they will value you more when they recognize that dad is on the board here, and that you're not alone. Uqsim billahi al-azim. They will give you more respect. So what I would recommend, put your dad on the board. It's okay. Make that relationship between you and your dad. If, hey, you're not trying to tell a guy that you're interested in getting married, you know what? Tell your dad. He's your mahram. Say, Dad, I'm interested in getting married. I'm actually feeling that I'm in a fitna. Let your dad do the job. Let him see the right way to do it. If you're shy to tell your dad, tell your mom. Let your mom tell your father. She knows your mom. Trust me. She's been living and married to him for a long time. She knows how to get to his brain. She knows how to get her way. She knows how to do that. All right? That's not the other part. Now, let's say all of those methods fail. Zina is absolutely haram. There's no question about it. Never is that acceptable. Never is it acceptable for whether we're talking about zina methods, zina roots, we're talking about pornography, we're talking about zina and talking to boys and any of that, or chatting with boys online, Facebook, whatever it is, discourse, whatever, all these different platforms. It's haram to chat with boys and to chat with these guys and say, I'm coming with the intention of getting married. That's absolutely haram and not acceptable. The question that somebody might ask, well, is masturbation at all permissible? If you want to leave, that's okay. That's a question that many girls would ask me. Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِفُرُوجِهِمْ حَافِظُونَ إلا على أزواجهم أو ما ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين فمن ابتغى وراء ذلك فأولئك هم العادون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that those that would guard their private parts except in front of their spouses or their bondswomen, those are the ones that are not held accountable, and whoever transgresses that, they would be basically had committed a sin and accountable. Now, all scholars agree that masturbation is haram, okay? Yet, the only ones that considered that in cases like Ibn Abbas, and the only ones that considered it as not permissible per se, but they considered it as a lesser evil, are the Hanbali. The Hanbali considered that if their desire had gone too strong, they had tried all the methods, and that masturbation was helping them basically control that. Ibn Abbas and the Hanbali, they considered that that would be an alternative, but they still have to seek marriage and not use that as a method to basically get out of marriage or away from marriage, but basically to help them cope with the desire controlling them into zina. Okay, so I'm trying to understand the question, and I'm trying to basically give the responses even with those differences of opinions, because I do recognize that there could be divorcees that had a marriage experience before, or maybe widowed, and the list goes on and on. So I'm laying out those opinions. I'm not saying it's halal, but I'm saying there's a considerable opinion that said that this would be allowed in circumstances when, because I'm seeing the word matter still go wrong, that's when I would put, just a number of different possibilities of what really is meant by that sentence. Okay, so if you mean by that, I hope I explained it. And if let's see, another question. Okay, we've got here. If there's another where father, okay, here it is. I'm wondering if it's the other way around, where the fathers accept a proposal on your behalf after you say no, and then warn you that if you don't marry this person, he will divorce your mother and separating your siblings from her. This is common in forced marriages in West African culture. If after being married for years and you still refuse, they end up pregnant. Is there barakah in that? I actually have a family member in that situation right now, she says. Okay, so number one is that if the father, let's say, forces you into that marriage that you don't approve of, okay? Now, is the marriage valid or not? The marriage is valid, okay? if she were to go into this marriage. But the father is definitely at sin, and a big sin, for forcing the daughter into this relationship. Let me tell you the story. The woman basically, a woman comes to the Prophet ﷺ and said, my father is forcing me to get married to his nephew in order to alleviate his khasisa. That's the word she used. What is khasisa? The word khasisa very much sounds like calling him a sissy, basically not lacking masculinity. So then the father, the Prophet ﷺ, calls him out. I need him to come forward because we can't make a judgment from just her statement. Maybe there's a different narrative. So come over. Is that true? Yes, it is. It is true. And then, what? Okay. Then the Prophet ﷺ, then, oh dear. Just, oh dear. Hold on. Just give me a second. Then the Prophet ﷺ basically says that this is to be rejected and that the marriage cannot go on. That's when the lady says, well, I'll approve what my dad had said, but I just wanted the later women to know that their fathers don't have the right to force them into something that they disapprove of. Okay, so remember when we said something being valid and something being right or wrong? So just because something is valid, it doesn't make it right. And just because something is not right there, fully right, it wasn't done right, it doesn't necessarily make it invalid. It wasn't right the way the father had done it, but it doesn't make the marriage invalid. Okay, the marriage is valid. Now, other scholars had considered that the marriage is invalid. Just to let you know, we're going to get in details with this ijab and qabul and consent and what if she doesn't consent to it. We're going to get into details with all the different opinions between scholars and their evidence. But I'm just giving you right now because I don't want you running to your cousin or your family member and say, girl, your marriage is invalid, you're doomed. No, that's not what I want to say. I'm just making a fast answer right there. The marriage is valid. And the father is held accountable, and certainly we'll go and get into details, inshallah, later on. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, inshallah.
Sheikh, I have a question. Can I ask?
Go ahead, dear.
Here in the slides, it says that the girl will be sinful for the action, but why will the girl be sinful? It's not her choice. It was a father's choice.
If it's not her choice and it was the father's choice, then she's not held accountable.
But if it is her choice,
if
she's accountable.
Choice, she's accountable. In the situation where the tawfiq story, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if it's not her choice, she won't be held accountable. But if it is her choice, then she is held accountable.
And let's say if the dad accepts, but the girl, she's like, it doesn't make the difference if it's any of the man. So in that case, will she be accountable again?
Well, it depends. We can debate on that. The scholars will debate on that. It's not going to be a definitive answer here.
I get it. And Sheikha, in our culture, there's something as half nikah. Is that correct according to Islam? So
Tell me what
before
that looks like in your culture. What do you mean by that?
in half nikah is like when they get engaged. I think I'm not sure exactly what they do, but I think they don't agree on the mahar and they wait until the wedding. After the wedding, they appoint the mahar and they say it's full nikah, he's done now. But before the wedding, they say it's half nikah and both the girl and the boy.
Is there a marriage contract? The question is there a marriage contract?
So there is a contract, but it's not fully done. It's like half contract
Are there
done. I
witnesses?
don't know. Yeah, there is witnesses.
They're witnesses. Is there, did he say zawajtuka binti and then, but they just can't, they just delayed talking about the details of mahar? Is that what we're talking about?
I'm not sure exactly if they did that. I mean,
So
if
get
they
me
do
some
say that sometimes.
information, get me some information to make sure that I'm actually,
All right. All right,
I'm
Sheikha.
actually discussing something that
Okay.
is valid, okay, because I don't want to give you the wrong information and then, you know, tell all these Afghans right there, you ladies, you're married, valid, and then you're like, yeah.
All right, Sheikha. Jazakallah khairan.
وإياكم. Any other questions, my friends? MashaAllah, you have been really patient. I hope I'm able to explain. If there's somebody that is getting lost in the differences of opinions thing, please do tell me. Sumaya, go ahead, dear.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So I have a question regarding who a man can marry and who a woman can marry. So you did say that that the mother or the father cannot go and marry their son or daughter's spouses. However, what if the mom and dad had children together? So, for example, if I had a stepdad, and then my parents divorce, well, my mom divorces him, but there are children, so I have half siblings. Would that still be considered a permissible marriage or no?
Hold on. So you're okay. So you're talking about your stepdad getting married to another woman, right?
No. So if my stepdad had children of his own,
Okay.
but he
Don't
married
share
my
mother.
mom.
Yeah, you don't that you can get married to that person because that those children you don't share same mom or same dad. You don't share mom and dad, or you don't
Even if we
share.
share a sibling?
You share siblings, but you don't share same mom and dad. Sharing siblings does not make them your siblings. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Sumaya,
yeah, I
okay.
do.
So
So
in order for them to be your siblings, you would share either a mom or a dad.
they're not considered your mahram, and
No,
I'd have
dear.
to wear hijab in front of them,
Yes,
even if
dear. Yes.
my parents are still married.
Yes, ma'am. I know. Did I surprise you in that? Yeah, even if they're still married. Yep. They're not considered your mahram.
So even if we live in the same household,
Even if you live in the same household. If you don't share mom or dad with them, but you share siblings, those are not your mahrams. Yes, even if you live in the same households.
but their father would be my permanent mahram, correct?
Their father would be your permanent mahram forever and ever and ever. Even if your mom were to divorce him.
Okay, jazakallah khairan.
But remind me to talk about Rabiba down the road. There's your Rabiba. There's a lot of details about Rabiba. Inshallah, we'll talk about that, inshallah.
Okay, jazakallah khairan.
وإياكم. So this is it, inshallah. We will see you next week. Inshallah. Oh, actually, somebody sent me a question. Okay, let's see. What advice could you give to sisters who are actively seeking marriage, decent in their knowledge and deen, but are often denied a basic initial conversation because they come from a specific ethnicity? It is important to add that it's not an issue of cultural incompatibility, but clear racism and stereotyping of that sister's ethnicity. This often makes the pool of potential suitors significantly smaller. How could sisters navigate this problem and maintain hope? Fair enough, dear. Racism is big in our societies. You know what? It's an international thing. Racism is real. But one thing I would say, and I've said that many times, when we speak about racism, that does not mean if I were to say, okay, you come from, I don't know, Guinea, and you wanted to marry somebody, I would say, hey, I really recommend marrying from your own people. You know why? Because it makes a better communication. But is that always the case? That's not necessarily always the case. And let's say there was a potential candidate and this person, very good person, etc. But then your father is objecting because, let's say he's Somali. You're all the way from West Africa and this guy's from East Africa. All right. And certainly, they're just rejecting this person just because of his ethnicity. I would recommend this man, really let him do the job. He has to do the job and actually go in a smart way, intelligent way, perhaps go to that dad's masjid, introduce himself, invite him, for example, be a man and let him see how you really suit his daughter. He has to be the one that is responsible to break down those stereotypes. You can come in and break down those stereotypes and say, I've met these great people from this culture, and here's what I had seen. And, you would try to soften some things, but I will tell you one thing. If, let's say, you tried to talk to your dad, but dad is just so fanatic about his vision, and that, no, we're not going to accept this, etc. I've had situations like that, where, Somali father basically comes from, a tribe, it's called the Darod, and this other tribe is basically called the Hawiya, and they're like, no way, over a dead body would we get our daughter coming from a Daro tribe, marry somebody from the Hawiya. And it was like, absolutely not. Absolutely. A whole civil war basically happened, and many people were killed just because of this. دعوها فإنها منتنة. The Prophet ﷺ said, leave this racism, for it is muntina. It is smelly. What do you mean smelly? When you say smelly, you're talking about the smell of civil wars. You're talking about the smell of killing. You're talking about the smell of so much hatred that can fuel more than just rejecting a person. And I would recommend perhaps getting uncles involved, letting them basically test this person, see this person, and really see إذا جاءكم من ترضون دينه وخلقه فزوجوه. See this person's akhlaq, see this person's deen, see this person's character before you would reject him. And I've had cases where, subhanAllah, the fathers were, extremely strict and extremely fanatic, that there's no way that they were going to accept. But subhanAllah, when Rabbil Alameen wills rizq, Rabbil Alameen will bring it forth. Rabbil Alameen will open the hearts. Do not disgrace your fathers, and do not go for a potential candidate and lose your father. Never do such a thing. You can never guarantee who this person is. You can say, well, yeah, we went to school together, asked about it. You can say all that you say. Your father will always be your father. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send to you other candidates, but never disgrace your father and go out with a man or behind his back and think that, I'm going to force you to say yes. No, don't do that. A good woman of integrity knows that she is an honorable woman, and an honorable woman would never dishonor her own family, her own place of support. So what I would say is that clear away the racism by bringing in, educating from the deen, to letting the other person get to know that person in a way, sometimes when you meet somebody in person, it's completely different than, this person, this random person that is somewhere that we had never seen. And subhanAllah, Rabbil Alameen will soften the hearts. Rabbil Alameen will soften the hearts, but never disgrace your family. Never disgrace from your family and do anything behind their back. So, 1, clear away the racism through deen. 2, clear away the racism perhaps by asking him, that is that guy, to basically go and meet your father in person and try to talk to him personally. Number 3, maybe getting your uncles involved, your brothers involved, and maybe other people involved, your mother involved, to clear away the racism. Hope that helps. And inshallah, Rabbil Alameen will bring about the best for all of you, whether married or not. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring you the best of rizq and make the dua. رَبِّ لَا تَذَرْنِي فَرْدًا وَأَنْتَ خَيْرُ الْوَارِثِينَ. Ya Allah, that you are the best of those that would give the provision. Allahumma ameen. So inshallah, we'll see you all inshallah next week. And let's see, so this sister saying, honestly, I wouldn't recommend it. From my own experience, once kids are involved, they can end up feeling outcasted, even if they are the same race, just from the different tribes. So hold on, what does that mean? One kid is going to say, I feel like from a different race? Layla Ali, what are you saying?
No, earlier she's about the racism. If you marry, even at the beginning, if the parents don't approve you or the in-laws, your kids are later going to be outcasted.
Okay, yeah.
Like going into a family that doesn't accept you, your kids will also not be accepted at the end.
So, I would really say it really differs. My father was somebody that insisted that I would marry a Palestinian, all of that. And subhanallah, my uncle, he was the one that got involved and talked to my dad, and my dad basically talked to my husband at the time, of course, potential candidate. My husband is Palestinian, my father is Palestinian, my husband is Tunisian. So my father, he was insisting that he couldn't understand the accent. And but my uncle and the rest of the family, they basically looked into the case. And right now, alhamdulillah, like my husband, mashallah, really a person that very proud, even our family, even my family is very proud to even have him within our family. MashaAllah, a great scholar, a person of religion, a person of akhlaq, a person of piety, and all of that. And, it's really an honor to, right now, my family's even honored to have him as part of the family. So it really depends. If this person is a person of akhlaq and a person of deen, subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالْعَمَلُ الصَّالِحُ يَرْفَعُ. What would really elevate you is really your amal as-salih. If you're a person of piety, if you're a person of deen, Wallahi al-azim, Rabbil Alameen will let your akhlaq and your deen elevate you despite all the racism in the people. People will see you of a person of honor regardless of your race. If you're a person of akhlaq, regardless of the race. But, different opinions, and we can have different approaches. And right now, people can right now live in separate communities. They're not as integrated as before. But, I guess it depends on the dynamic, and it depends on the circumstance, and it depends on the races and the country and the tradition and all of that. From one experience, it differs from one person to another. That's it. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت. And see you all tomorrow, or tomorrow for tafsir and family fiqh next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
وعليكم السلام.